achieved.
There's something to be said for fighters who are willing to take an opponent on short notice, and we saw it come back to bite not one but two fighters in the ass last weekend. Louis Smolka lost by first-round submission to Brandon Moreno, who was a relative no-one coming off the Ultimate Fighter, got eliminated in the Ultimate Fighter, comes in and submits Smolka, ends his 4-fight winning streak, puts a huge and abrupt halt to his run up the rankings, at least temporarily, and, it's a devastating loss for a young fighter. Josh Berkman also lost to a relative unknown in Zach Otto, and that could most likely be Berkman's final fight in the UFC. They might give him another one because he still accepted the fight and he lost by split decision, but he has not looked good. And then when you put him in that situation, you lose to a short notice injury replacement who's never fought in the UFC before. It's a hard sell to say I deserve another opportunity to fight. I think the growing trend is going to be fighters are going to say, no, I'd rather not fight. And we're actually seeing that right now with Mirsad Bektic. As of right now, his opponent has not been announced. They temporarily had him tied to Jeremy Kennedy, and now Kennedy immediately pulled out due to injury or disconnected himself from the fight. So I'm only giving you 4 main card predictions. The Bektic fight will be available at my on my website. But welcome back to Kamikaze Overdrive MMA Predictions. As always, I am your host, Scott Johnson. In this episode of the tour, we're breaking into the upcoming UFC 204 event, which will take place on October 8th, featuring the middleweight title fight. Rematch, Michael Bisping taking on Dan Henderson. And again, the short notice fights came back to bite a lot of people on the ass on the weekend. It was a very, both the fighters themselves and the bettors. Now, it was a tough show. I went 6-6 at UFC Fight Night 96. But, there were a lot of upsets. A lot of people did a lot worse than that. I had 3 solid picks. I had John Lineker, I had Alex Oliveira, and I had Andre Fili. The Keita Nakamura loss was devastating. Had he picked up the victory there, which he started off looking like he should have, a lot of people felt he did enough to probably earn that win. Had he won that, it would have been a fantastic. I would have gone 7-5, which doesn't sound great, but he was the key to a couple of my big fights, and we would have cashed huge. The bet packs, as always, will be available for $12. Again, we're having a lot of success. I think we had, a lot of success with the general information, providing good prop bet options, good analysis of each fight, and giving you the ins and outs, the betting, availability for each fight. The parlays just aren't cashing. They're a portion of the prelim or my bet packs. They certainly are not everything. It's a big part everybody points to, but still, there's still a lot of valid information. And I get a lot of people emailing me saying, "Don't worry, the parlays aren't cashing. They will come. You're still giving solid breakdowns," and that's what my goal is to do. That's what we're going to look to do here again. I am looking at doing something in the future to provide insured bet packs where you can get a chunk of your money back should scenarios not hit. There'll be more details on that later on, but certainly in looking into that, I think people will take advantage of that. Nonetheless, the polls are up. Make sure you vote. This should be a very interesting card. We have 4 main card fights as of right now to break down, so let's get to that first main card prediction. Our first prediction comes to us in the UFC's heavyweight divisions. The 12th ranked Stefan Skyscraper Struve of the Netherlands with a record of 31 wins and 8 losses takes on the 14th ranked Daniel Omielanczuk of Poland with a current record of 19 wins, 5 losses, 1 draw, and a single no contest. Now, Omielanczuk is replacing Ruslan Magomedov, another late injury replacement, who's Magomedov coming out of the fight with a staph infection. He's also, I think, been recently notified of I believe they said, of a doping violation, potential doping violation. Omielanczuk's had about a month to prepare for this matchup. He did fight in July already, and so far he's 2-0 in 2016, so he's been relatively active. For Struve, he's coming off his stoppage victory of Antonio Bigfoot Silva in just 16 seconds. Prior to that, he lost to Jared Rosholt and had a kind of a tepid win over Big Nog, I believe in Big Nog's final UFC appearance. He did have back-to-back knockout losses against Alistair Overeem and Mark Hunt prior to that, and those are 2 big hitters, so it's hard to not get knocked out by those guys. For Struve, he will have a massive 11-inch height advantage. He is nearly a foot taller than Omielanczuk, almost 20 pounds heavier as well. He'll have a 10-inch reach advantage, and he is 6 years younger. So all of the physical breakdowns, physical numbers are favoring the big Dutch fighter. Number-wise, win column. Struve, 8 wins by knockout. He has 16 submission wins as well. He is 2-1 on the scorecard, so not known for going the distance. He does have 6 KO losses, which has been kind of the tail of the tape for his where his struggles have come inside the octagon. For Omielanczuk, 7-5 on the scorecards. He's a heavyweight who goes the distance a lot, but at the same time, he is the type of guy, it's not a great record, 7-5. He has 3 knockout wins, 9 submission victories as well. He's never been finished in his career. He has 2 TKO victories inside the octagon, and is 2-2 in fights that go the distance in the octagon. Now, Struve, he is at his best when he can fight long. He is still working on developing that, and if he can ever get down to that John Jones level, he's gonna make some waves. He throws a lot of kicks. He'll use that jab to keep his opponent on the outside, and likes to try and use their forward pressure to add to the impact of his strikes. Catch them coming in with a counter and really hurt them. He throws a nice long left jab and follows with a straight right. He was cracking Nogueira multiple times with that right hand. He'll also work in a right uppercut when possible. He throws that head kick. Why not? He's 7 feet tall. He can whip it up there, no problem, especially against Omielanczuk, who's so much shorter. It's not nearly that big of an effort to get it up there. He'll also throw a nice question mark kick, which can really catch guys off guard because they're waiting for the timing changes on that kick, and it's hard to defend against. He'll look for a straight kick down the middle to the body, throws very hard leg kicks, and he'll work in a stepping knee as well. And a lot of those options are open because of his height. When he took out Bigfoot came out looking to grapple right away, and Struve landed some short shots as he came in and followed him up with some inside punches to eventually finish him up. I believe there were some elbows worked in there as well. The big thing with Struve, and we've seen that he's returning from these health ailments, at times he can come out exceptionally flat. There wasn't a ton of activity in the Rochat fight. He was moving forward, just not landing. But then against Nogueira, it kind of turned into a punching bag. He landed a career best, UFC best, 93 significant strikes. As I said, he doesn't always use his reach well. Nogueira had a lot of success clinching and kind of throwing strikes over the top and, hurting him in that matchup. He was getting cracked with those flurries of punches, but again, he had success once he was able to kind of shut that down. When Rochat looked for takedowns, it's when Struve threw kicks. Once they hit the mat, Rochat was able to pass through the guard and hold him down. But Struve is sometimes pretty decent takedown-wise. 62% takedown defense. He's never been taken down more than one fight other than the 4 he gave up against Rochat. He's very crafty off his back, can offer sweeps, and keeps his opponent from getting comfortable. But again, against Rochat, he was way too complacent, got his guard passed, and struggled. Now, looking at the big pole, the Omielanczuk, not a big volume striker, and that attributes to his poor record in decisions. He will throw a head kick. He's not going to throw a head kick in this fight. At least, if he will, he's going to throw it and hit Struve in the waist. He'll throw some decent low kicks. He'll throw a step knee to the body as well. He tends to swing wild at times when he opens up, but more often than not, he will get outworked because he doesn't have a ton of volume, and that's going to be an issue here. But Omielanczuk, when he took out Chris De La Rocha, which was one of his better knockouts of late, he landed a very nice left hand early, scored a right hook for the knockout. He'll also throw a nice straight counter right. When he fought Alexei Oleinik, he hurt him with he hurt him with a counter left in that hand fight, and he showed some good kicks as well. He has had issues with takedown defense overall, even though he has a judo background. He was taken down by Rochat with ease, and Anthony Hamilton had a lot of success putting him on his back and keeping him there. He has some Oleinik also took him down 4 times. He has some grappling defense issues, and he was on his back early against Oleinik and fending off takedowns and struggled in that fight until Oleinik started to slow down. Once he was able to slow down and kind of Omielanczuk kind of got control of that fight, he had much more success. Struve at times isn't overwhelming, but he should find success with both his punches and kicks and keeping Omielanczuk on the outside. Once Daniel tries to close the distance, look for Struve to clinch, try and establish underhooks, and really use his leverage to shut down anything Omielanczuk wants to offer, and potentially even take this fight to the mat where he can attack. Omielanczuk is exceptionally tough to finish. Struve doesn't have a lot of experience fighting in going the distance, but my prediction is Stefan Struve to defeat Omielanczuk simply by being the more effective fighter and shutting down his offense. I think Struve takes it by decision. Moving right along to the light heavyweights now, the 5th-ranked Ovince St. Preux, 19-8-0, takes on the poster boy, the 8th-ranked Jimi Manuwa, the current record of 15 wins and 2 losses. OSP's coming off a loss to John Jones, which was for the interim title. He was filling in for Daniel Cormier in that fight. He took it on short notice, broke his arm in that matchup, still went the distance. It was kind of one of those performances like, yeah, good for you, good for trying. You definitely weren't expected to win, and certainly did not. For Manuwa, he has been out of action for 13 months. He had a KO loss against Anthony Rumble Johnson in his last fight. Honestly, who hasn't? He has lost 2 of his last 3 fights by knockout and faced the leader of the division because the other loss came against Alexander Gustafsson. OSP is 2 inches taller. He's a southpaw. Keep that in mind. He'll have a 1-inch reach advantage, and he's the younger man by 3 years. Now for Manuwa, he has 13 wins by knockout, 2 losses by knockout, 1 win by submission, and 1 win on the scorecards, which was a recent fight. His most recent actually win over Jan Blachowicz. For OSP, 9 knockout wins, 5 submissions, so a little bit more diversified finishing skills. He is 5-6 in the scorecards. Not a great record in fights that go the distance. He has 1 loss each by knockout and submission. For Manuwa, he is an absolutely violent striking repertoire. Throws exceptionally hard kicks, very thumping combinations, and he'll work in some knees and elbows, which makes him that much more of a violent striker. He will dig to the body with his punches. A nice variety of kicks, front leg kicks and side kicks. Good head movement overall when exchanging. He's exceptionally dangerous in the clinch as well. Against Ryan Jimmo, rest in peace, he had a lot of success out-muscling in that position and landing some strikes, and he can generate a lot of power in short distances. When he fought Blachowicz, he was simply being more active than Jan in that fight and had success there. But at the same time, against Gus and against Rumble, he was hesitant to pull the trigger, and who can blame you in that fight? And that's why he ultimately lost. They got the better of him in both those matchups, eventually finishing him. Statistically, he lands almost one more strike per minute than OSP, but he gets hit one more strike per minute as well, so it's kind of lost in the wash there. The takedown defense of Manuwa has been a big question mark. He gave up several takedowns in his debut victory. He has appeared to improve his takedown defense to a degree, 68% defensive takedown rate, if you will. But both Gus and Johnson took him down multiple times. Jan Blachowicz went 0 for 3, but you can see again, he's fighting elite. They're having success. Where does OSP fit in that equation? The other thing to look at Manuwa is his cardio. He's only gone 3 rounds one time in his career. When he fought Kingsbury way back in the day when he debuted, he was exceptionally tired in that matchup and still giving up takedowns and just struggled. But the question is, where does that put him if this fight goes longer? Now looking at OSP, very good kicks, front and back leg body kicks. So he'll go to the front. Sorry, just make that clear. Nice front kicks, and he'll also, and he really does a nice job of extending on that, and he'll go to the body with some back leg body kicks as well. He hurt Glover to the body with a nice round kick. He'll throw some knees to the body as well. He likes to target the body when he attacks. Let's make that perfectly clear. Straight left and left jab are some of his hand techniques he likes to throw. He took out Shogun with a counter left hand, also landed a counter uppercut to take out Patrick Cummins. But with OSP, he does tend to plod forward when he's striking. He's a little bit flat-footed, and he hangs his hands a little bit, which I don't like. Almost a little bit too relaxed. Drops that guard when he throws, and he will tire and he will get sloppy at times when he is exchanging and once he starts to slow down. Lots of single strikes, and when he fought Ryan Jimmo, he was getting cracked with some strikes early on in that fight and kind of, having trouble figuring that scenario out. When he fought Rafael Feijão, he was exceptionally inactive. Didn't throw a ton. When he did throw, it was single punches, single kicks. His hands were down, but where he was able to find success, it was he would hurt him with a flash shot, jump on top. He did this in both rounds 1 and 2, I believe. I can't remember if he did it in round 3, but landed a big shot. Feijão went to the mat. OSP got on top. It was the most significant aspect of a relatively uneventful round, and he got the nod in that round for that and ultimately won the decision. He tends at times to have trouble closing the distance, especially when there's a threat of a power striker. He was chasing Feijão instead of cutting the cage off and was not very effective as a result. We also look at OSP, everybody points to OSP and talks about takedowns in wrestling, but it's not been as big a factor as we'd like to believe. In his 3 losses, he's given up 18 takedowns. That's not going to be an issue in this fight, so I don't even know why I'm bringing it up, as Manuwa is not a guy who's going to look for takedowns in this fight. If he does, fantastic for him, but I don't expect it. He's given up only 1 takedown in his last 7 fights, again, a non-factor. He's only landed 4 takedowns during his last 7 victories. So it's not like he's a takedown machine. Not a huge takedown threat. He has a good submission game, very good top game. And that's what he could look to implement if he can get on top and put Manuwa on the mat. The biggest thing with OSP is he struggles when he can't finish fights. Additionally, he's fighting in enemy territory, and that can be tough in a close decision. He's fighting in the UK against the UK fighters, very popular. And we talked about OSP has a bad record in fights that go the distance. His volume isn't there. If he can't finish his opponent, he's not a big takedown guy. His volume isn't overwhelming, and he tends to get hit a lot, and he will slow down, which makes him more vulnerable. He needs to find a way to get Manuwa out of the mat in this fight, is the way I look at it, or force him to hesitate and not throw and allow OSP to land a decent number of strikes, but nothing out of the ordinary, and where he'd have to pick up his work rate and tire himself out in the process. Manuwa, the long layoff is absolutely concerning, but OSP is coming off an injury and a title fight loss, so there is a bit of a letdown possibility here. He's been to the top. He saw what what the best has to offer. He held his own. It was kind of a moral victory, if you will, but it was a loss nonetheless, and that could impact him here. I think look for OSP to struggle with his output, struggle to land enough strikes. He takes some damage early on and kind of backs off. I think he's actually going to have very limited success with his grappling game if he can't score on that initial shot. I think Manuwa is going to dictate the pace, hurt him in the clinch with some knees. Both guys are going to slow down, which are going to cancel each other out. I think this fight goes the distance, which is kind of abnormal for both fighters, or at least certainly for Manuwa. It's going to come down to a very close decision, and my prediction is Jimi Manuwa to defeat Ovince St. Preux, possibly by split decision, at the very least a very close decision. In the co-main event of the evening, we are in the UFC's middleweight division as the former light heavyweight champion, I believe heavyweight champion as well, fifth ranked, the Phenom Vitor Belfort, 25 wins and 12 defeats, takes on the ninth ranked former Strikeforce light heavyweight champion Gegard Mousasi, 39 wins, 6 losses, and 2 draws. I guess he's not the dream catcher anymore, long lost. He's long put that nickname behind him. Now, Belfort is coming off a TKO loss to Jacare. He only has 2 wins his last 4 fights. Both of those wins are coming over the guy fighting for the heavyweight title. For the middleweight title in the main event, Dan Henderson. Belfort also has wins over the guy who's the former champion, Luke Rockhold, and Michael Bisping. So it's kind of shows you how odd this event is a little bit when you look at what Belfort's done, and he's fighting in the co-main event, not the main event. For Mousasi, he has back-to-back wins coming into this. He has 1 loss in his last 4, dating back to the Jacare loss. He also has a TKO victory over Dan Henderson at span, so he also holds a victory over the current title challenger, and yet he couldn't get an opportunity to fight Bisping for the title. I'm fine with the main event. I'm just pointing out some irregularities, or regularities, if you will, based on the way the UFC does business sometimes. Mousasi, 2 inches taller, 2-inch reach advantage, 8 years younger, and he is still looking, as I mentioned, for his opportunity to fight the title. Belfort's already been there. He's trying to get back, but that is certainly fading away with every loss. For Gegard, he has 20 wins by knockout on his record compared to Vitor Belfort, who has 18, so both guys have a lot of knockouts. Vitor, though, is 7-7 in fights that don't end in KO. Mousasi, 12 submission wins, so another avenue to victory there, and 7-2 in the scorecards. Belfort has 5 knockout losses, so it's starting to pile up. Mousasi has the one coming against Uriah Hall, which we'll talk about momentarily. Belfort is a quality over quantity striker. He averages 1.57 strikes landed per minute. That's not a lot for a guy who's fought at the elite level. 2.51 strikes absorbed per minute. So the striking exchange rate is terrible, but you got to consider the power factor. He likes to pace himself. He looks for openings, doesn't throw a lot, and then boom, he explodes into attack and looks to finish his opponent. And the question is with Vitor, especially post-TRT Vitor, how many times can he do this before he gets tired? Once? Twice? Can't knock his opponent out, has to do it a 3rd time, starts to slow down, starts to lose a little of that edge, far less effective, and it's all downhill from there. He has only gone outside of the first round in 2 of his last 9 fights, the one against Bisping and the one against John Jones. And those fights are kind of behind us as well. So he's had a lot of issues finishing, with fights being done quickly. So this fight goes deeper. How is he going to hold up? The kicking aspect of his game, when we saw Mousasi get knocked out by that kick, Vitor's got some big kicks. He's knocked out Bisping with a head kick, took out Dan Henderson, Luke Rockhold, all with kicks. It's been a central part of his offense and kind of his revitalization en route to getting a title shot that he ultimately got smoked in. Both Weidman and Jacare, the aforementioned getting smoked in especially, smashed him on the floor. They just needed a single takedown. They put Vitor there, and he was absolutely helpless off his back. Even though he showed against John Jones he can attack off his back, he looked outclassed in those situations, and that really, really was an area he struggled. And that's worth mentioning because Mousasi will go to the mat. Belfort 1-3 in his last 3 bouts outside of Brazil, where this one is 5-1 in Brazil in his last 6 fights to go there. And that one loss coming in his last fight against Jacare, another Brazilian, so not exactly the same scenario. Worth noting, I think. His one win outside of Brazil came against Yoshihiro Akiyama. Now, for Gegard Mousasi, he throws a very nice left jab. He throws a very hard body kick as well, and a nice straight right hook. He'll mix those together. He's found a lot of success when he starts to push forward, but he can be a frustrating fighter to watch because he has all the gifts in the world, and at times he seems too complacent and willing to sit back. He's addressed that, and I think he's trying to make that a focal point of his current push to a title shot, be more aggressive. But he's very measured. He moves away under pressure very well, and he can strike moving backwards, which makes him dangerous to just simply attack blindly. As I said, he's had trouble pulling the trigger at times, especially against Lyoto Machida, but that was a different type of fight there. He tends to be a little flat-footed and plod, but he's much lighter than has much better footwork than it would appear. He's coming off 81 significant strikes landing against Talos Latis, which is his best UFC number, and he can pile up the damage and really limit what his opponent is able to land on him. He averages 3.56 strikes landed per minute versus 1.6 strikes absorbed. That's a big differential. That's 2 significant strikes per minute he's landing. So that's a 30-point gap over 15 minutes. That's huge. Additionally, he has an iron chin. It's not perfect, as Uriah Hall certainly pointed out, but it's very sturdy, let's say. I also mentioned before, Belfort's had some issues on the mat. Mousasi is capable of scoring takedowns and grinding out that top position fight. He's a judo black belt. We saw him dominate Uriah Hall on the mat for a round. He had 4 versus Costa Philippou, 2 versus Santos before he knocked him out. Actually knocked him out while Santos was getting up from a takedown. So that's an area that Mousasi could look to exploit. Belfort's low striking totals and that lack of output where he relies on a knockout doesn't hold up well in theory against a fighter with a very strong defense. It's going to limit those offensive bursts even more, and that has an exceptionally strong, not unbreakable, but very strong chin. That's not a good scenario, not a good equation for Vitor to be looking at. Add in the potential for takedowns and top control that Mousasi has to offer, and Vitor could be really at a loss here to find offense outside of scoring a knockout. Additionally, Mousasi has a lot of power, still needs to be very mindful what Vitor brings to the cage as far as offensive threats are concerned. He certainly can't get lazy, but I think Mousasi will avoid that early damage, take that measured approach, potentially counter with some takedowns if Belfort tries to come forward. He'll wear Vitor out by simply being the more effective striker. You got to back the better chin in this fight, and that's what I'm doing. Either Mousasi catches Belfort on the feet for a knockout or grinds him out on the mat, but my prediction is Gegard Mousasi. Grinds him on the mat, eventually lands something. My prediction is Gegard Mousasi to defeat Vitor Belfort by knockout. We now move to the main event of the evening. It's for the UFC's middleweight title. And the champion, which I like Michael Bisping, so it feels good to say, Michael the Count Bisping, 30 wins and 7 losses, puts that title on the line in his first official UFC title defense against an old opponent, both in age and in the fact they've fought at UFC 100 and 3 pay-per-views ago, in the 13th ranked Dan Henderson. Henderson coming with a record of 32 wins and 14 losses. A very contestable title shot that a lot of people have had issues with. A lot of people saying there's a lot better middleweight fights out there and fighters out there than Dan Henderson, which it's hard to argue against. It certainly is, but I like this matchup at least because I think it had to happen, especially with Henderson opting to walk away. This is a rematch from UFC 100, as I mentioned, a second round knockout for Henderson. We've seen it. Everyone's seen it. If you haven't seen it and you're an MMA fan, what's your fucking problem? Came on the heels of Bisping and Henderson coaching each other in The Ultimate Fighter. Henderson was supposed to get an opportunity to fight for the title after that, but left and went on his run to win the light heavyweight title in Strikeforce. Now, for currently, Michael Bisping is enjoying the best run of his mixed martial arts career. He has wins over Anderson Silva and Luke Rockhold to capture the title. Massive rejuvenation, rebuild for the Brit. Henderson is coming off a pretty solid win over Hector Lombard, but it's been a downward trend for Hendo, if you will. Bisping 2 inches taller, Dan's 2-inch reach advantage, which is surprising. The Count is 9 years younger, which is significant, considering he is no spring chicken. This would be the ultimate smack in the face for Michael Bisping and undo all of the recent success he's had if he drops the title here to Dan Henderson at home, gets knocked out, loses the title, fails to get revenge, and Henderson takes the title and walks off into the sunset, retires, and Bisping is left with his, twig and berries hanging in the wind, if you will. Since their first fight, Bisping has gone 12-5, Henderson has gone 7-7. Dan did go 4-1 in Strikeforce, but has been 3-6 since returning to the UFC. Not great. The first fight, 29-22 significant strikes landed for Dan. One really significant strike kind of looms large in that equation. We saw Dan looking to load up, and he was stalking Bisping throughout the fight. For Bisping, he was sticking and moving. Lots of movement, circling away, and looking to get in and get out. Dan was unloading anytime he got Bisping pushed back towards the cage where he knew, okay, he doesn't have as much room to avoid me. I'm going to take my shots here. And Dan was connecting on multiple occasions with that big right hand. Bisping was looking to stick to the outside, land a left jab, right hook combination, circling a lot at times, and Joe pointed out multiple times, he was moving into Dan's power hand, that right hand, circling into it, and that's what got him in trouble. Dan was throwing a lot of sequences of lefts to try and set up the right, kind of corral him into the right hand. He was finding success in the clinch, landing some knees and short punches as well. when he scored the knockout, he threw a very short and what appeared to be kind of ineffectual low kick that corralled Bisping again and pushed him into that right hand. That's the big thing. Dan isn't a rangy striker, but if he can get you moving in the direction he wants you to get you in, then he can launch that H-bomb, if you will, and that's what he did. He used that low kick to push Bisping over, and then boom, landed the KO, and then of course that big monstrous flying follow-up strike that is kind of looming large here as well. Dan was slowing down a little bit up until that. Bisping was having a much better second round. Dan still had his burst, but he was hitting him less, telegraphing his punches. Even his body motion was showing, I'm about to throw a punch now, I'm about to throw a punch now. And that's why this was so effective, is it kind of came out of nowhere when he knocked him out. Back then, Dan had a much better chin, and he was faster. He was able to close and land that right hand with ferocity. For Bisping, he's more confident now in his striking than he was back then. He still can be hurt. We saw him get knocked out by Vitor, dropped by Luke Rocco before getting submitted. But certainly, these guys aren't in the same place they were when they first met. Bisping has picked up 5 knockout wins since that loss, and Dan has suffered the first 3 KOs of his career since knocking out Bisping, and they're very recent as well. Bisping's biggest weapons, some of his biggest weapons, are his cardio and his pressure. He can consistently push the pace without and attack. And if he can do that without getting hit and taking too much damage, he's very effective. When he fought Anderson Silva, he just kept pushing and attacking and didn't let up. He hurt him. He had him backing up. He had him in trouble. But at the same time, Talis Leidas had a lot of success buzzing Bisping, hurt him a couple of times, made that fight very close, and, put Bisping on the defensive. When he fought Luke Rocco, Bisping was landing a very nice spearing, long left jab, and then he was plugging him with a straight right a couple of times. He moved his head when he was exchanging, which made it very effective. He was landing some nice counters. He was using some kicks to maintain the distance. He throws a very nice switch kick when he's attacking. He'll go to the body or the head with it. He needs to avoid getting countered when he throws those kicks. That's something that he needs to use against Dan to try and create that distance. Bisping has become much better avoiding his opponent when he's under attack and getting out of dodge when things are starting to look a little bit chaotic. And then he does a good job of sitting down, refocusing, and attacking again. At times, he can just become skittish when he was younger and not be nearly as effective once he knows, okay, there's a threat of getting knocked out here. When he took out Rockhold, it was a beautiful left hook that he landed. He threw a right hook that missed and then landed a short left to hurt him and then finished with a left hook and then some ground and pound to put him down. And Bisping has much more power than we expect. He's got some big knockout numbers, but he's got more power than a lot of people give him credit for. Previously Dan's chin has allowed him to move forward, as I already mentioned. And without that concern of getting knocked out, he can eat a punch to land one. He's like, yeah, I'll make that trade any day of the week. That's not the case anymore. He still has good power. He still has timing. He'll still throw that low kick, and he did it against Hector Lombard. He landed through the low kick and landed a huge right hand in very similar fashion. But then he rushed in and got hurt. And we saw it against Shogun as well. He kind of got over anxious and got himself hurt while attacking. He was dropped with the left hand again later on and nearly finished, collapsing against the cage, but he battled and eventually got the win. As I said, he likes to throw that inside low kick to set up the big power hands. He wants to get in the pocket and land. He actually landed a head kick of all things against Hector Lombard. It was kind of a battle of small middleweights, or smaller middleweights, if you will, and scored kind of an awkward elbow. It was just like, hey, get out of my way, you elbow your brother or sister at the dinner table, and it knocked out Hector Lombard. He wants to create chaos, and that's something he wants to do. He wants to create chaos and then look to land a big shot. That's how he wins here in this fight. Create chaos. Use feints to keep Bisping guessing when it's coming. Use his Greco-Roman wrestling background to kind of slow him down in the clinch, get your hands on him, and get him at close quarters. Try to draw him in, create that chaos, land that H-bomb. Tim Boach ran into it. Lombard, it was chaotic. He scored a knockout as a result. For Bisping, he has to avoid letting Dan rush him. Avoid those close-range exchanges where he's in the same spot for a prolonged period of time. Move in, move out, circle away, attack, get in, get out. Dan's chin isn't as good as it used to be, and Bisping is going to find success landing quick combinations. Bisping's a much more confident fighter, much more effective fighter than he was when he fought Dan Henderson. Bisping's got older, but it's improved him, I think. At the same time, I wouldn't be shocked to see Henderson, the way the MMA world works, land that knockout blow and finish Michael Bisping and win the title, and people go, what the fuck just happened? But my prediction is Michael Bisping to gain a large measure of revenge, hurt Dan, swarm him for the finish. My prediction is Michael Bisping to defeat Dan Henderson by knockout. And then be exceptionally classy after the fact. Because that's what Bisping does. He talks trash beforehand, but he will mention that Dan Henderson is a legend, and he wishes him all the best. and he appreciates the fact that he took this rematch. That's what Bisping does. He's a good guy. I like him. So those are my 4 main card predictions for UFC 204. The other main card fight, Mirsad Bektic versus whoever the heck steps up to fight that, or a fight gets bumped from the prelims up if the Bektic fight gets pulled, which is a shame for Bektic because he's been on the show for a long time. Either way, those are all my predictions for the main card. Everything else that I didn't predict here for UFC 204 will be available on my website. Vote in the polls. Follow me at KO_predictions on Twitter. We're also available on Facebook. I always appreciate the thumbs up on YouTube if you like my videos. I get a lot of thumbs down, which is completely fine and understandable. That's cool. That's why it's there. Use the thumbs down if you don't like what I'm talking about. That's totally fine with me. I appreciate it either way. I appreciate the acknowledgement that I did a video and you took the time to say, hey, I don't like this shit. Or, hey, yeah, good stuff. Thumbs up. We have one more event. It's been a long run. We have one more event that I'm getting ready to do. And after this, we get a bit of a break, which I'm looking forward to. It's kind of nice to recharge the batteries and get super excited. And I got some stuff I want to do on the website and other things I want to work on outside of this business here. So thanks for always tuning in, guys. Really appreciate it. And we'll talk soon. Take care.